Thanks again for joining us. I'm Jack Karsh. I'm the practice manager for the contact center at EDCi. Today's event, the briefing that we're hosting, is really kind of a transition from what we consider contact centers into communication centers into an overall very complex type of interaction center. Don Brown was supposed to be here, but because of a personal reason wasn't able to. Thankfully, Jeff was kind enough to maneuver on short notice, hop on a plane, and get out here at 9:15 when he probably left at 8:15. So we do appreciate that, Jeff. Thank you so much for doing that. Today we'll go through a couple of things real quickly in terms of just the housekeeping. We'll introduce some people, let you know names to faces, and then we'll get into a little bit more about EDCi as an organization and what we're focused on in terms of the contact center, the network, and so on and so forth. And then I'll give you a little bit about the buzz, what's going on, what trends we're seeing, what we're doing to address those things in terms of solutions and partnership. And then we'll bring Jeff up to do a deeper dive on Interactive and CIC and what they're doing and what they're seeing in terms of a partner here to the contact center. We'll have a little bit of time for Q&A for all of you to kind of shoot some rapid fire questions at Jeff. He's looking forward to that, I know. Introductions. We have 4 practices, so we have some of those practice leaders here. Roger Knabe is our practice manager for infrastructure. Roger's waving.
Morning, everybody.
I don't know if Greg Opperman is here. He's our practice manager for IT services. Bill Rabb, I think, is going to be joining us as well. He's our colleague on the virtualization side with Citrix. And Mr. Nick Cephas is our EVP of sales and marketing. Other folks that have joined us, Dawn Surprise is here. She works on both the infrastructure and virtualization practice. Sarah Higgins is here. She's with our sister company, Electroline. We have Gary Fisher is here. He's one of our pre-sales architects, and he works on the infrastructure side, correct? Yep. Okay. And who am I missing from the EDCi folks? Phil Stenz manages our support department. So Phil is here as well. I think I've got everybody, okay? From a standpoint of the contact center, Jackie Korth, she's here as our business relationship manager. There's Jackie. Mike Bura is our pre-sales architect. Mike's back there. Okay. And joining us from Interactive, we have Mr. Jeff Farmer, Mr. Bob Romano, it's over there, and Jennifer Lippert, who's our new director of channel marketing. So welcome to everybody that's here from I3 as well. We're really happy to have you. A little bit about EDCi. We have 4 key practices, so the pillars of our organization. Contact center is one of those pillars. We focus on on-premise as well as the cloud and doing some enterprise things. We also have virtualization, where we're led by Bill Rabb, who will be here a little later, but he works on virtualization of applications, the desktop, servers, SAN. Roger's practice, which is infrastructure. He has the cabling, the LAN, also the SAN. And then we have Greg's team, who does all of the IT staffing. So Greg is looking to position both short-term and long-term folks for BAs, software developers, help desk, and many other roles within the IT organization. All of those are backboned by our managed services and support department, which is led by Phil. And this is important, I think, because a lot of companies, they specialize or they focus on one key area. In terms of EDCi, when we land and expand and we come to talk to you about solutions, we typically do a high-level assessment. So we're coming in and we're taking a look at the entire infrastructure. What your plans are 3, 4, 5 years out, and how our individual solutions as practices will fit in terms of the business strategy, IT, and the contact center. So we don't see them as being fragmented. We see them as being married together. That's where I think EDCi has an advantage in terms of how we partner and how we understand your business and what your needs are. Our Pride slide, it covers a lot of different verticals, a lot of different arenas in a lot of different places. So we're happy to have a lot of these folks here today joining us as current partners. I would encourage everyone here, not just as an executive briefing event, but also as a networking event, talk to each other. Find out what EDCi is helping them to accomplish, how we deploy, how we work with them, how strategic we are. It's very rare, I think, that you find a partner that really takes the time and pays attention to the business needs of all those key stakeholder groups. We do that very well. And I don't think that's just something that I'm saying. I would say that that's something that our partners would also say. So we're really proud of these relationships, and we're also proud of the fact that we're growing these relationships through strategic initiatives and being able to leverage all 4 of those practices, bringing people together, having them talk about solutions and accomplishing a goal. Why we're special, well, I alluded to it a little bit. I think we're really good about aligning IT with the overall business strategy that helps to optimize the efforts of the contact center. So that's really where we're strong in terms of our key drivers, people. So within the contact center, we have over 75 years of experience, not just between Mike, Jackie, and I. That would be a lot of experience. But we have 75 years of experience running IT, also running client relationships within the contact center, and then running the business. So we feel there's a credibility factor when we sit across the table from all of you, knowing that at one time or other we sat in your seats. So we worked for organizations that actually deploy i3, and we asked all those tough questions. So we understand it from the customer side as well. The other thing is the process piece. So the process that we deploy is really pretty simple. We put the customer at the center of all decisions. So many times where Mike, Jackie, and I will come and we'll meet with you, we ask a lot of customer-focused questions. I think that'll become even more apparent today as we talk about what's transitioning and what's pushing the shift of technology. It's customer-based. It's really the end user, both the internal user as well as the external user. They're really driving technology and the demand of how they want to interact with us, not the other way around. The continuous improvement piece, this is really a strategic role for Jackie in our practice because she goes arm in arm with the folks that are deploying the solution to not only understand how it works, but how to leverage it and how it's going to help them make a better organization. So Jackie's wealth of experience is really unmatched by anybody that I know in the industry in terms of being able to get on site, meet with the people, understand what their business reasons are, what they're trying to accomplish within the contact center, and then bringing it to life, actually making it happen. Some of the things we're working on today. So as you look at the contact center, we're seeing a shift in technology, but it goes all the way from PBX all the way through to document management and everything in between. So the different relationships we have, some are deploying almost all these solutions in terms of their contact center. Others are deploying a few. The cool thing about the interactive solution is that it's scalable. So even though we tout that it's all in one, it's not all at once. So it provides a great migration path to building technology in terms of the contact center. If it's something that you want to look at in terms of analytics or workforce management or document management, we can put those things in. Later on down the road where you're end of life with PBX or some other solution, obviously there's a path there to migrate for it. So we're doing a lot of these things today. Everybody's a little different. We're doing a lot for some and a little for others, but that's okay because based on the continuous improvement path, we'll get there eventually. We'll make sure that it's a solution that fits your needs and not something that we just want to sell to you. Okay. So some interesting research. Nick was able to pull together some information from Gartner that I thought was pretty relevant to our discussion today. The things that are top of mind for CIOs, as an example, the number one thing that these CIOs that were polled responded to was customer experience. So to me, that's validation, and I'm sure it's validation to all of you that we're looking at this thing the right way. No longer is it the right strategy, I believe, to look at the contact center to say, we need to do things this way because it's most profitable for us. It's more efficient for us. Now it really is coming down to loyalty of that customer, the interaction type. Is it consistently high quality? How do we keep the customers we have and grow those relationships? Whereas in the past, traditionally, it's been just the opposite. We've looked at how do we drive more efficiency, more time on the phone out of the contact center. Now that's not the case. It's important, but we're searching for the right balance in terms of high customer care, retention of customers, driving the most out of that relationship, organically growing it versus how do we make the most money out of it. So the customer expectation. These were a few of the tidbits that Nick also gave us yesterday that I thought were amusing, and I mentioned to some of the folks here today before I started that I hope you think they're amusing as well, because although I was surprised, I wasn't shocked, but we'll see if you guys have the same feeling. So 2 out of 3 of all mobile data traffic will be video by 2015. Okay, I can believe that. That makes sense. We're kind of transitioning in that direction. This is what surprised me a little bit. 1/3 of college students would rather have an internet than a car. Okay, I could see that based on my kids. Yeah, that's probably right. They don't go anywhere anyway. They sit in front of the computer. 2/3 of college students would rather have a mobile device versus a date. Now that scared the hell out of me. Who are these kids? But I think what you're seeing from this, and obviously it's humorous, but I think what you're seeing is that our customers are changing dramatically. The way they communicate with us is changing dramatically. And they're really driving the technology. So back to the topic of what this briefing was about, it's not about the contact center. It's not about a call center. It's about a communication center. So how are we changing and morphing and trying to stay ahead of the demands of our customers, the end user? In addition, we're seeing trends like bring your own device. So it's a user experience too. Many of you that I've talked to over the last year or so, you're viewing your customer as your internal user as well, which is the right way to look at it, I believe. So you've got 2 sets of customers. Those that are trying to work and manage all their life through work and trying to find the most efficient way to do it internally, but then also externally. All of us as customers, we know we're trying to look for the fastest way to get to a logical choice, decision, answer. So we need to start to make it easier. Turn this thing on its head a little bit. So this is the way I see it now. We're really asking the customer to jump through hoops to work with us. Again, as I've met with a lot of your organizations, I see different approaches, and they vary in terms of how we're communicating and we're connecting to our customers. Some are doing that through customer-driven value. Some are doing that through the experience. Some are doing that through offers. All these things are equally important. But as we look at the customer, are we really running the communication center as a convenience for us, or is it a convenience for them? In addition, are we limiting the engagement power? Are we only measuring phone, maybe some email, chat? We have to look at being as aggressive with measuring and understanding and driving analytics through all of those interaction types. That's really going to help us make decisions into the future. Once we have the data, we can start to make smart decisions in terms of where we deploy resources, dollars, marketing dollars, and being proactive in this effort, in this partnership. You don't know me. That means you don't care. So what are we doing on the front end to understand our customers with the analytics and starting to get ahead? We've probably all experienced the IVR hell or being put in terms of an agent, and then the agent asks you for an account number and your name, and then I'll transfer you, and you have to repeat the same information again and again and again. It's very frustrating. We've all been there. So as leaders in the IT and customer care world, we're also customers ourselves. Now it seems like a pretty clear-cut issue and challenge, but the solutions aren't so much. We're hoping to bring some additional ideas today through what Jeff's going to talk about that will give you at least some choices in terms of how to make that easier, how to better understand your customers, and be proactive with that information. Gen Xers, Gen Yers, fast food society, right? They want it when they want it, how they want it. It's got to happen now. So very rarely do we find that generation picking up the phone and actually interacting with somebody for care. They want to text somebody, they want to go online, they want to chat. So all of these things coming into play, again, how do we measure it? Do we have full visibility to it? Can we control it? Can we drive adherence through it? Real difficult to do at this point, but there are solutions on the horizon that are going to help us out. The technology is raising the expectation, and that's driven by the customer, the user experience. They're demanding it. They're telling us, if you don't want to deal with me this way, I'll go elsewhere. I have choices. And those choices, the easier that they're made, the quicker they shift. People jump. If you don't have a captive market, which I don't think anyone in this room really does, there's always competition. They can always go elsewhere. We have to be cognizant of that. It's real easy to shift. And people today, the loyalty factor is low, where they're being provided less than service, right? You need to have high quality service to keep people. And again, these customers are changing. The demographic is changing. The decision makers, those that have the dollars, it's all changing now. So the big question is, are we willing to change with them? Today, as I'm sure Jeff will cover, there are many, many ways of doing this and addressing these key challenges, but they're not insurmountable. You know, there are smart people that are coming up with solutions to these things. And I think even though the contact center has changed from just measuring phone to measuring other interactions, there's a long way to go. There's a long way to go. So I touted a big announcement today, and I'll put that on Dr. Don Brown, but since Dr. Brown's not here, Jeff, you can make all of those big announcements and go back as the hero. But we did talk about some innovative things that I believe will change the way customers interact with the communication center. I think that it will address some of the key things that we had talked about earlier, which is a better understanding of the customer's needs, the right balance between efficiency and that high-quality experience that we talked about, and then also using that communication center as a weapon, as a strategic piece of your business. No longer is it the cost center. No longer. It's a profit center. It's a center to drive customer loyalty. And it's really the front line of every one of our businesses, really is, the engagement of your customers with your agents. So, any questions real quickly before I introduce Jeff? Okay. Jeff Gerardo. So, VP of Product Development at Interactive Intelligence. Jeff joined Interactive in 1995 as the 8th employee. And even before that, you were with Dr. Brown as well at another company as well that he had started, correct? Okay. Previous roles, Senior Software Engineer, Team Lead, Director of Development, and Director of Development at Interactive. Notable accomplishments, designed and developed several core IC components, including the Interaction Designer and Processor. And congratulations to Jeff, 20 years with Dr. Brown. So please help me to welcome Jeff Gerardo, VP of Product Development.
So as Jack called it, here's our pride slide. And you can see a lot of brand names up there. Now, way back in the day, a long time ago, we weren't able to get brand names. We had much smaller customers, names you wouldn't recognize. About 8 years ago, 7 years ago, Don started pushing a lot harder to go up market and get bigger names. And we started changing our product to meet the needs of those bigger customers. And we've been pretty successful. We've got some really good names up there. But Don constantly reminds development, it's also the smaller customers that matter. It's all the mid-sized customers that matter too. So even if your name's not up there on the pride slide, that doesn't mean that we're not proud of you as a customer. I think it mostly means we've run out of room on the slide at this point. So the markets we're in. As we started out with enterprise IP telephony and the contact center. Those have been our bread and butter for years and years. We hired expertise in those areas. And in the last couple years, we've been building out into business process automation. I'll touch on that a little bit. You're probably somewhat familiar with it already. And one of the things that we've harped on over the years is the all-in-one platform. Many, many years ago, that was all in one box. At this point in time, that doesn't make sense anymore. It makes better to distribute things across a few boxes, but it's still all in one. You still get all those features together. You get the reporting that wraps it all together. Now, Don always wants me to hype the fact that now we can do cloud services as well as on-premises. From the developer's perspective, that doesn't change a lot of things, so I always forget to add that. So he made me put that at the bottom of the slide to make sure that I mention it. For customers, that's a big deal. Cloud services have taken a huge uptake with us. We're getting a lot more action in the cloud, and I certainly see it as a positive thing. Anything that reduces the load for customers, makes it easier for them to move with our product, I certainly see it as a good thing. Okay, every year we work with Gartner, one of the industry analysts, to they analyze our product, they look at where we are in the market, and they come up with what they call the Magic Quadrant. Now, this is what I call a pseudo-graph because they don't actually have numbers here, but it's a nice visual representation of where they think we stand relative to our competitors. On the vertical axis, they put our ability to execute. In other words, can we really carry out the vision? And of course, on the horizontal axis, it's how complete is the vision that we talk about. And that upper right quadrant is the one that they call the Leaders Quadrant. And we've been in the Leaders Quadrant for, I believe, 4 years, maybe 3 years. We moved up in ability to execute every year, and this year, again, we had another jump in execution. They like our vision. They tend to place us amongst the leaders there, too. Gartner often looks at specifically things that their customers are asking them about. They work with a lot of customers to find out what's on the cutting edge, what are the customers' worries about, and then they figure out how much does the vision match that particular thing. If a vendor is hyping something in the vision that customers aren't talking about and Gartner doesn't see working out, they're not going to give them points for that. So we've been in the Leaders Quadrant for quite a while, and I hope we stay there. That's certainly one of my jobs, is to keep us up there. So we started out in IP telephony, and long ago that was the cutting edge, but it's not anymore. Everybody's doing IP telephony. It's almost assumed that everyone's going to do it. So we had an IP PBX. We took care of the security. We focused a lot on remote access and presence and providing directories and access to agents. But then we had to build out our product, and it builds out with unified messaging. This is where you get voicemail in your email inbox, getting faxes through your same phone number, being able to do desktop faxing, outbound faxing from your desktop. After that, we started to look at, okay, what's with unified communications? Desktop video is one of the ones that Jack just mentioned. We're seeing a lot more video action. That's something that will be coming from us. IMing, conferencing, web conferencing. In other words, things that have gotten away from just basic phone calls to a lot of different kinds of communications. And then we got to look at automation. Automation is really where you reduce your costs in one way or another, but continue to provide the same levels of service. So providing IVR that allows customers to do navigation and make some choices, of course. ACD for routing to the correct people using skills. Of course, outbound dialing for any of the telemarketing companies out there. Web chat and email routing are two things that came up and became very big 5, 6, 7 years ago. Quality monitoring is a big deal. As always, you always want to make sure you're paying attention to what's happening with your callers. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. Workforce management, customer surveys, and you know, the old screen pop, that's the thing we've always needed. Agents always need to know what's going on with their customers. And then the last thing that we're really building out into is getting away from just interactions and thinking more about what other kinds of work can be routed to people. And that's where we get into business automation. So, you know, with the first stroke, you would see something like our interaction process automation. But built on top of that, you're also going to see document management as a key element. Almost anything that manages processes also has to deal with documents. And then on top of that, we've formed the vision that really almost everything your company does can be viewed as a case. You're handling some kind of case. Either it's initiated by customers or it's initiated by you. And we see the long term being integrating all these pieces together into case management. So the architecture that we have is really kind of evolved over the years to separate handling media, in other words, phone calls and analysis, from the actual switching of the call. So this is a build-out slide that Don built for me. essentially, if you think about, in the old world, a call coming in through the network, the way that it works right now is we have our server, the blue line there, handles the switching of the call. In other words, the routing, but we run the audio through the media server. And this gives us a lot more expandability in what we're going to do. Once we decide what skills are needed for the call, of course, we route it to an agent. We also, on the green line there, we also do any screen pop, route things to the agent on the computer, and we can drive our screen pops and things like that. Yeah, we'll go on here. This is the client interface, in case you've never seen it. Up at the top, you can see the interaction queue. This is the agent's calls that have come in. This is a little bit what I call more of an enterprise view for the client. This is the way we use it internally. Down at the bottom, we have the company directory. The agent can also, or the user can also specify different directories that the administrator has allowed them to add, and those would go across the bottom. This interface tends to look a little old nowadays. We're working on revamping the look. Our web client looks totally different, much more revamped. But Don prefers this screenshot right now for the client, so I'm going to roll with that one. Multimedia ACD. We were one of the first in the industry to introduce the idea of doing ACD for different interaction types. What that does is it makes for more consistent handling of different interactions. Reliable queuing into your customers, into your shouldn't say that, into your agents. Presence is an important part. We introduced the idea that agents have different statuses, and ACD can route based on statuses. And of course, we have skills-based routing. Nowadays, I think that's a pretty standard feature. When we first introduced it, it was kind of rare. Now, an important thing that we introduced is the idea of location independence, as far as where your agents are relative to the server. We can now route to remote agents, geographically distributed agents, and that allows you to expand your workforce beyond what your current corporate boundaries are. That's been a thing that's been very big with our customers, especially the ones who have temporary workforces that they can bring online or drop offline as they need based on capacity. Now, one of the things that I wanted to talk a lot about is Interaction Analyzer. Right now, if you're recording all your customer calls and you've got 100 agents and let's say 12 calls per hour in an 8-hour shift, you're going to get, what, about 10,000 call recordings a day. Now, there's a lot of value. There's a lot of information in those recorded calls. Customers are telling you things. They're telling agents things. I'm really frustrated. I keep calling back, and blah, blah, blah. And then on the agent side, there's also information about your agent's performance. Are they saying the right things? Or are they saying things like, I can't help you? The one here that I want to point out is that you people phrase. You people are so. Way back when we started looking at conversational speech analysis, we had a couple industry experts come and talk to us. And one of the analysts said that they had done a survey in the United States of different phrases that people say and what they really mean. And the number one phrase that this survey showed was a real concern for contact centers is when the customer says, you people. When they say you people, they are mentally separating themselves from the contact center. And that's the first step to saying, I'm going to unsubscribe, I'm going to buy a different product, et cetera, et cetera. So that phrase, you people, we were pretty stunned. We didn't know that that phrase was so key. But ever since then, I've been very sensitive to you people. And I certainly have noticed it. The only time you people is used is in a negative context, or unless someone's making a joke. But in general, it's not a good phrase. So there you are. You've got 10,000 call recordings per day. There's lots of value out there. You could learn a lot from that. But if you've only got a few people reviewing those recordings, you might get through some subset, let's say 90-some%, 98%, 99%. You're not really seeing the whole value. What you're doing is sampling. That's not a bad first step, but we've got some tools that could help you get much further along the line. Interaction Analyzer is really the solution that can help. It provides computer automation to look for key phrases, both by caller and by agent. on the lines. And it does this in real time. So you can now do things like alert the supervisor immediately when you hear certain phrases said by the agent. This is certainly a situation that calls for some coaching, for instance. Another important thing about Analyzer is since it's doing real-time analysis during the call and it's flagging the recording as it goes, there's no reprocessing needed later for scoring off of the recordings. So Analyzer uses something that's called conversational word spotting. Now this is a bit different than the speech recognition that you may have heard about for several years, which is really command and control, where someone can call in and say yes and no and a limited set of commands. That's a different kind of speech recognition. Conversational word spotting requires that our machine listen into the whole conversation, differentiate between agent and caller, and recognize when certain phrases are said. This is an example conversation that somebody put together for me. But essentially, in this one, you might be looking for key phrases your agent is going to say, either positive or negative. Maybe you've trained them to say, start off with, how can I help you today, or some phrase like that. Well, then you want to give them a small quality score for saying the right things. Similarly, on the caller side, here that highlighted in red, you people always make me do this twice. Right? So you people is one of the key phrases right in there. That's a sign that this person's getting frustrated with you. Now, if it's repeated several times, the Analyzer can tell a supervisor, hey, it's come up several times, this person's a little bit more frustrated with you. This kind of analysis is a lot different than command and control, and you won't see as many vendors able to do it, especially in real time. So if you've got a supervisor sitting out there with a bunch of agents, which call should I listen to? We've talked to some supervisors who say, I just pick them randomly. Or I know that Johnny so-and-so is kind of a troublemaker, so I listen in on him. With Analyzer, the supervisor can be told when it seems like there's trouble on particular calls. We're hearing a lot of frustration words from this customer. Maybe you should listen in. Maybe you should help coach the agent. In severe cases, you might want to jump in and speak to the at-risk customers right away. The nice thing about Analyzer is it's doing it real time. So I want to emphasize that the supervisor can step in and deal with agent issues right away. If you're waiting for end of the week or end of the month, post-processing, recording of calls to look at agents' scores, it's a little bit late to fix that behavior. They've already damaged your relationship with a lot of customers. This real-time nature allows you to jump on it right away. Maybe the agent's having a bad day. Maybe they forgot their training. It's hard to say, but always nip it in the bud. The sooner the better. Any of you who have kids know this already, I think. Can you see that screen well? Yeah, probably not good enough to read it. From the supervisor view, this is showing what an alert looks like. So they've received a notification that the agent has a positive score, but they're seeing different phrases coming across. And I think this one's set up. The customer score is negative 24. So the customer's saying some things that they're frustrated about. The agent's not saying anything bad, but maybe you should listen in and see what's going on, and maybe you can coach the agent into a way to help the customer more. I pretty much walked you through part of that. But the agent, basically the idea here is that the supervisor can see enough information to figure out if they need to get involved. Now, on Analyzer, from the perspective of a quality manager, at the end of the week, end of the month, whatever period you look at recordings, the quality manager in the past, which ones am I going to look at? Which ones do I sample and review, listen to a whole recording on? In the past, it was chosen at random. With Analyzer, since it did real-time analysis and flagged the recordings, it sets attributes on each of the recordings with the different phrase sets that the Analyzer was watching for. And it tags them so that the quality manager can say, okay, I think I want to look at this one with a low agent score. And it also has the unhappy customer phrase set in it. So it allows them to kind of pre-filter and pick out the things that, that they trained Analyzer to see as most important. So here's an example of call recording. This is the recorder dialog showing the recording across the top. And as you can see, the little blue diamonds show a flag when analyzer recognized a phrase. So here the agent said, "I completely understand." Apparently that's a positive phrase. It shows empathy with the customer. So that one's highlighted there. Now in our upcoming analyzer update, we're actually going to separate the channel between agent and caller here. So you'll see which phrases came from agent, which phrases came from caller. That's our #1 request for analyzer recorded calls. I want to make sure you knew that's in there. Okay, so from the call center manager, what you can really do is use this to identify trends by analyzing more of your data. That data has been sitting out there all this time. I think in the past, if you analyzed it at all, the lag time between when it happened and when you analyzed it was so long, it was a little too late to do things about it. This is going to shorten that cycle to the point where you can effectively deal with these things immediately. So you can see your trends with churn, unhappy customers. You can identify first call resolution issues with your agents. You can make sure that your agents are complying with training. And you can identify what are the key drivers in calls. Here's an example of a trend analysis that we generated. And I think our next bit, oh, sorry. Yeah, so this dialogue's not legible for you, I guess. Basically, it charts out the different phrase sets and what's happening over the course of the calls. Configuring it is fairly straightforward, although of course it does require some thought about what phrases you want to watch for. But essentially you can create different keyword sets, and you can label those in a meaningful way to you. So up here they have a couple different keyword sets. The top one is first call resolution from the agent side. The other one is customer's first call resolution. And then of course there's other ones, negative agent, positive agent, unhappy customer. Those are examples that we put together. Now across the bottom you'll see the words that are part of the highlighted set. So I've called before, keep calling, calling back, time I've called. And one of the things that Analyzer does is when you're configuring it and you put in a phrase, it tells you what it considers the spotability of that phrase. In other words, if you put in a really short word, maybe a monosyllable word like I, that's not going to be very spottable. We're going to spot it all the time, which is not going to be very useful to you. So the green line kind of tells you how spottable it is for our system. And then you can set a confidence threshold. How confident does our system have to be that that phrase was spoken before we mark it as a phrase that was spoken? So here they've set all of them at 60%.
Does it have the ability to actually tell you what some of the common phrases are that it's hearing throughout a period of time?
It does not. That's a feature we've talked about, and we'd like to get there. And every time I talk to my speech scientists about this, they look at me like I'm crazy and say that's a ways off. But that's one of the things that we'd like to get is, okay, you know, if you say I've got last month's recording, what are we hearing a lot of? You know, pick out the highest ones, and then we'll go listen to a couple of those recordings and see if it's something that we should be paying attention to. Right now, it doesn't do that, but that's certainly somewhere we'd like to get to. And I think we will.
Keep pushing on it.
Okay. Thank you. So again, these keyword sets make it a little bit easier for you to manage. Rather than one long big pile, you can break these things down into the keyword sets. So with Analyzer, I'm going to build this out real quick here. A lot of boxes, but it's all built into the CIC system. So essentially, I talked about what the view is from the recorder client. Okay, we've tied Analyzer in with recorder. It's pretty important once we flag things that you'd be able to go back and listen to that call and see whether things were flagged. Our media server is key to this. Media server is what carries the load and does the weightlifting with Analyzer. On the administrator side, of course, you manage your keyword list there. The supervisor gets the alerts and can see real-time scores of what's happening with analyzed calls. And one of the interesting things is that we've enabled some of these capabilities through iClibs. So you can write your own applications to watch for flags and watch for Analyzer alerts coming through, which allows you to do your own custom things if you've got some new capability that you'd like to carry out or something custom for you. And of course, we've tied it all together with reporting so that you can watch for trends and things like that. I'd love to get to the point to do a forecast based on existing data. We'll get there someday, I think. And then this is basically a slide that shows the path that things follow. Very similar to any of the other calls. The key here is that the media server is doing the analysis of the audio as it comes through the box. So when somebody says something like cancel my subscription, media server immediately recognizes that as a word in one of the keyword sets, and it notifies CIC, the CIC box. And CIC is going to do the record keeping on that. It's going to flag it. It's going to tag the recording. It's going to send something to supervisor. If there's an alert set up, it's going to let the supervisor know, or supervisors. And if it's set up through IceLab, you're going to get notification out to the client to carry out anything that's going to happen there. Okay, so are there any questions about Analyzer? Okay. You can ask me afterwards, too. The next thing I want to talk about is the business process automation. Don points out regularly that everybody uses processes. Whether they know it or not, they're using processes. You can find all kinds of examples across many industries. It's pretty common. If you look in IT, they almost always have some form of a change management, change control type system. They also have some form of help desk because it's very common for requests to come in. From the HR perspective, there's extremely common things. Dealing with change of address, employee onboarding, employee termination, transfers between departments, etc. Finance and legal have quite a few standard operations they carry out. Sales and marketing with lead management, campaign management. And then, of course, service and support, return authorizations and things like that. This is very common in almost any industry. And then we also see a lot of things specific to verticals. In insurance, there is always participant enrollment, claims processing. Healthcare definitely has patient access, the revenue cycle. Financial services, always dealing with loans and credit fulfillment. And there's a lot of regulation around these in particular. And so they have to mind their P's and Q's. It's not just about operational efficiency. It's about following the letter of the law in whatever region they're working in. And of course, with government, they have a lot of different claims processing going on. So we see both horizontal and vertical need for process management. And the common factor that we talk about from the development side is that all these processes are multi-step and should be people-centric. It's taken a long time for computing to really get to the point of being people-centric, but we see it more and more. We see it with mobile devices, the iPads and things like that. And we're starting to see it a lot more in enterprise software as well. So as an example, managing the outpatient procedure scheduling process is one example we talk about a lot with IPA. There's a whole series of steps that have to happen just with scheduling someone for outpatient surgery. There's the schedule. There's pre-registration to get all the information you need before they even show up at the door. Then once they show up, it's verifying that they are the people that you pre-registered earlier and verifying a lot of the information they pre-registered with. And then, of course, after the deal is done, you got to get paid. So there's a significant billing cycle, making sure you get a hold of the customer and get the money from them. And of course, any follow-up with health issues, making sure that they actually recovered okay and things like that. That's a simple example. I think you can imagine some fairly significant details that happen just in this particular process. Now, one thing that a lot of other business process companies don't really focus on is there's many different avenues that this event could have started. Customers want to interact in all kinds of ways. Traditional phone call, over fax, email, or some of the more modern things with using their mobile devices or using chat or coming in through the web. We look at our past history of experience with those kind of interactions, and we're taking those as ways to build into process automation. And there's more build-outs of stuff. Don loves to point out the piles of paper. Every time we talk about process automation, he talks about how we're eliminating paperwork. Paper got us through at least the last couple hundred years of process. So it hasn't been a bad thing, but it can get very confusing, and it's not very searchable. So in modern terms, a pile of paper is a big problem. And that's exactly what a lot of big companies have. They have lots of processes tied to paper. Some of them have failed projects where they tried to take the paper system, translate it to a computing system. It didn't really work right because you can't just take paper and translate it directly to computer. It doesn't always work as well. So we've taken that into consideration with IPA and tried to focus on what's going to be different when you move this process into the computer system. Okay, so again, I mentioned the pile of paper. It gets filed away. It's gone forever. You can't learn from that. It's very difficult to report on these kind of things. And so a lot of times a process, at least here's an experience from us as a growing company. You know, over the last 17 years, we've grown from 8 employees to 1,100, and there's still some processes that we don't have fully automated. So it's very common to have an email like this go to HR. I hired a new employee, Jason, and I need to get him set up with a network account. He's a developer, so he'll need access to the various development servers as well as the source code control system. So this is a hiring manager letting HR know about onboarding some employee. And in prose, he's saying all the things he needs, and he doesn't even know. He doesn't enumerate every development server he needs access to, probably because the hiring manager only has a vague idea. It's been a year or two since he hired somebody. The servers have changed. He doesn't know either. So he's hoping somebody else is going to figure this out. I can bet you that the HR manager won't know any better than that person did. And this is going to require a phone call back from HR to talk to the hiring manager. And then probably they'll get IT involved because they actually have the list of servers. So this kind of email can generate a whole lot of work. This is the kind of thing that we're trying to help smooth out with IPA. Now, as I mentioned, you know, it can generate extra calls, extra work. In the end, it's lost efficiency. And to a certain extent, I harp on it's a bit of a demoralizer for employees to go through this kind of thing. You know, imagine your first day on the job, HR's running around, they don't know what your authentication is going to be for the domain. Wow, what did you just walk into? What kind of job did you just take? So, you know, you have to be concerned about that, especially with something like the HR processes, is what's the impression to the internal customers, the internal employees? And of course, with process automation, we think of it as, you know, every instantiation of a process is like a little box, a little package. And it's going to grow to, or go to the first group of people who are going to do a certain amount of processing on it. But a lot of times they can't do the whole job. This isn't a ready-to-ship package yet, is it? They have to send it on to another department. So if that first group was sales, once they get the order, well, now it's got to go onward to order fulfillment. Someone along the way has to do some validation on this order. That's the kind of thing we're talking about here. And each of these people, when they're handling this package, they're adding information to it. This is important stuff. How much information did they add? What kind of reporting can we do on the information that was added? Once you can start to see that kind of stuff, you can start to identify areas for efficiency. You know, did it really need to go to that third group? Could we get this information in the first pass? But the whole idea is that once you've actually done the whole package, gotten everything ready, it's really going to get out the door. The shorter that cycle is, the better off you are. The less handling time you had, the less likelihood of an order being canceled, the less likelihood of some other disaster hurting your revenue on that. Now, we've built out IPA so that some things can be automated. I know that your organizations have spent many years building different back-end services. You may be familiar with the term service-oriented architecture. IS departments for a long time have been moving towards a more service-oriented architecture. And we built IPA to take advantage of that fact. If your IS department already has web services available that can carry out certain pieces of operation, IPA can hook directly into that. We can hit internal databases, existing CRM systems, your finance backends, or if you have external internet-based web services for various validations, you can set up an adapter to hook to those as well. Oh, there, we puffed up the box, added data to it. I just realized that was in there. Another thing that we've found out is some customers have already been out on the dance floor once with an existing workflow system. SharePoint, to a certain extent, can be used as a workflow system. SAP, Microsoft Visual Studio. A lot of those have been hyping workflow for a long time. So it doesn't surprise me that people have been building some pieces of workflow out there. And one of the key things about IPA is we're not going to tell you to throw all that away. What we're going to say is we have other pieces that can integrate with this. We can help you take advantage of the stuff you've already put your work into. And I think we're going to puff up the box again. So in this case, they show it going off to a third-party workflow. And in this case, they might have built some SharePoint stuff that puffs up the box. And we're going to go ahead and get that shipped off. Another important thing that we've done with IPA is we've recognized sometimes in the processing of an order or something like that, it's going to require more interaction. And we're sitting front and center on with the PBX, ready to do communications over email or over phone to help get that order done quickly. And this can be a lot more efficient because our system can do the outbound dialing. It can tie into the reporting. It can basically help carry out this whole operation. It's a lot easier than back in the day someone got a piece of paper in their inbox and said, oh man, I got to call this person. What's their number again? I got to go look it up. Oh wait, they're not there. Do they have another number available? All those directories are accessible directly from Interaction Center. Now one thing that's pretty key is it's not uncommon that in processing a more complex order, let's say a loan for instance, the process is not linear. There are pieces that can be broken out and done separately. Credit verification while you're also verifying another part of the loan, for instance. And IPA handles that. IPA takes that into account. You can build parallel processes that fork off and can complete and then reach a wait point until all the other pieces are completed before it goes on to finish. And I think that mirrors the real world fairly well. What's interesting is that back in the days of paper systems, people did that all the time, but they didn't always realize that's what they were doing. They carried out parallel processes regularly, but when you heard them describe it and they did it on the whiteboard, they didn't draw it as a parallel thing. They drew it as sequential. And then we do this, and then we do this, and then we do this. Luckily, we've picked that up and we've put the idea of parallelism into IPA. Let's see. So with process automation, and this is, of course, a simplification, you define the box. And that means define what data package we're actually talking about. And one of the things about IPA is that you can have different views of that data package. So for a loan, not everyone who views that loan application should be able to view every single field of the loan application. There's important financial information in there. There's social security numbers. There's et cetera. Not everyone who handles the box needs to see everything that's inside the box. And IPA has layers of security so that you can create different views and different roles. And you can say, all right, this person really only needs to see name and address and phone numbers. This person over here, they need to see the social security number or they need to see the actual financial information. And then, of course, another step after you've laid out the roles and the data is to lay out the process flow. What is this thing actually going to do? So IPA is set up very much in that form. What you're looking at is the interaction designer, and it allows you to set up your process data and also design the forms that are going to be used by the different players in your process. One of the nice things is because you've already got Interaction Center client installed out on the user's desktops, you can deploy this process without ever touching the end user desktops. You can deploy as many processes as you want. And of course, you can track the performance of everyone handling processes in real time, just like we can with phone calls and interactions. And I mentioned already, but you can control who's able to view or modify particular pieces of data. You can completely encrypt sensitive pieces of data, and you can control who views it. And you can also control, I guess, the important point of the last point is that you can handle sensitive data. We can have it encrypted, and it'll never be in the clear, either in transmission or in logs. Designer is also the thing that we use for creating forms. Forms generation is called a what you see, what you get, WYSIWYG. You lay out your forms, you describe them. They can now be multi-page forms in case the data is extensive. And it allows you to associate different user interface controls with pieces of data that are inside the box. So the whole idea is you define that box from the beginning, and now you're designing different forms that can show the data inside the box. Don is a big fan of MASH. I don't know if you know that. So he included some pictures of the MASH crew. This is an example of a form. Up at the top is what it looked like when we were doing the design, and this is what it looks like on the end user screen. So you can see it's very much, as the designer's doing it, they're going to see exactly what the end agent is going to be using for it. We can embed videos, photos, etc., and of course all the data fields as well. Designer is also what you use to lay out the process flow. Here is a simple sequential one, but like I said, you can also fork out parallel paths as well. And you can identify various states within the process, and that's what's used from the supervisor view to see what state a particular instance of a process is in. Designer has ways that you can invoke web services directly. So if you point at existing web services, if your IS department points you to the WSDL, it's called, it's a definition of your web service, then Designer can pull that directly in, pull up the definition, and show the different data fields as inputs and outputs. And I mentioned already, but it's important that we recognize that processes could be initiated from many different ways. Things coming in from the outside could include emails. They could include web chats. They could include something the customer does in the IVR. Or it could be something that the agent initiates based on discussion on the phone call. So they have a button in the client that says start the particular process. Or they could be initiated by something automated, an application or a system that you have. And that would be going through our IceLab interface to kick off that process. So after you've published your process, work items start showing up for these agents. This is the agent view. It's a little bit hard to read there, but essentially it's very much like phone calls showing up in their queue, but you'll note that it's on a tab, a separate tab called My Work Items. And you can actually break these different work items apart into different tabs. So if you have different processes, for instance, and you want people to process things differently, you can have different tabs so they can easily see all of them. And you can even say, okay, if a particular end user doesn't act on this within a predefined amount of time, it can come back and route to a different user. The simple example is manager approvals for, let's say, vacation or expenses. If it sits with the manager for, I don't know, in my department it'd be about 3 days, then you can pull it back and send it to their manager or a group of managers and say, hey, so-and-so is, oh, well, this is interesting. Did somebody order a whiteboard? But yeah, so as a simple example, pulling back a vacation approval and sending it out to the next manager up or the group of managers around it, just so that these kind of things don't sit too long when somebody's out on vacation or is taking a leave of absence or something that they did not have a chance to delegate all their duties. It doesn't get stuck there on their client. I mentioned already the designer lets you design these forms, and of course, when they open an IPA process, the end users are going to see the dialog that was designed. So here's an example of, we're showing them some of the data that's in the box. And of course, here's the supervisor view. Supervisors can monitor the states of every instance of a process that's in flow. We can even put data restrictions on, so the supervisors can't see sensitive information out of the form. They can open up the process, see what state it's in, without actually looking at what's inside the box. This is definitely required for a lot of the financial type processes that we're implementing. And of course, we have historical reporting, so you can see which players in your process are actually handling more processes. If you see somebody who's outstanding, you might want to talk to them and find out how do they do what they do so efficiently. Maybe there's a best practice you could learn here. That's the kind of thing you can get out of your historical reporting. You get a summary, you get a detail level for each of the processes, and then you can look at individual work items. So it drills all the way down to work items. Another thing that you can do is it's not uncommon, especially for a complex thing, if you think about a loan application, to have multiple interactions with the customer about this particular piece of data that's in the process. Interaction Center allows you to associate an interaction with an existing workflow item. With the idea being that you'll want to be able to report on the fact that you talked to a customer 5 times with this particular process. That's the kind of thing that a lot of customers expect. There's a lot of frustration when you talk to customers. Every time I call, they don't even know that I've got a process in flow. They don't remember that I called last week. Well, I understand from the call center's perspective, geez, we got 100 agents. How do we keep track of all this stuff? Well, the system is supposed to do that for you. As long as they associate that call with a workflow item, then later on, people can see, again, I'm getting back to case management, they can see how many interactions you've had with this customer. Another thing that's important and is still forthcoming from us is an IPA marketplace. We recognize that we don't want people to sit out there and reinvent the wheel over and over again with all of their own IPA processes. Some things can be pre-built. Vacation approvals, for instance, I think are very similar across many, many companies. So we're creating a marketplace that will allow partners like EDCi or independent developers to build processes and publish them on the marketplace in such a way that contact centers can buy them and download them and apply them to their systems and even customize them once they've been put in place. Don is pushing for packaged integrations to commercial applications. So our third-party integrations group is looking at what packages they could do to CRM, ERP, and different financial services. All right, so I've kind of touched on the benefits of process automation, but I'll just kind of review here real quick. If you can make your system more efficient and maintain the same level of service, or even make it better, then overall you're improving your competitive advantage. And that's essentially what all these bullet points are about. Reduce your costs, increase your revenue generation, and enhance the customer experience. Those are the things that I think you're focused on. Those are the things that we're focused on helping you do. Okay, a little bit about content management. Did anybody have questions about process automation first? Okay. Content management. Now this is Don's phrasing. He loves to say that current document management systems are cumbersome and dumb. I've seen some that are cumbersome and some that are dumb, only a few that are both. But essentially, it looks at things as folders and documents. And we've kind of taken that to the next level and said, what we want to do is really object-oriented customer management or content management. And that's kind of a developer term. You probably won't see that in our marketing materials. But essentially what we're saying is that every customer document has a set of metadata that we tie to it. And you can derive off of that specific pieces of customer data, and it will inherit those attributes. So, for instance, here, a general customer document has customer ID, first name and last name, and some security policy that, okay, all of this has to be encrypted, as a simple example. Then you can derive a customer contract off of that and say, besides having all the things that a customer document is going to have, a customer contract also has a start date and a term. It has a specific file type. It can only be a PDF file, no Word documents for a contract. And as far as access, only finance can edit that particular contract. So the idea there is that rather than go through, let's say that you had a whole bunch of different types of contracts, rather than go through and add customer ID, first name, last name to every kind of contract, instead you say all these contracts are derived off of a customer document. And right away, every contract is going to inherit the attributes that you've put at the top of the tree there in customer document. You can also define containers and classes for specifying how things can be stored and where they can be stored. And you can organize those containers into hierarchies. You can think of it somewhat like file directories, but the nice thing is that containers can have rules about them. And again, they can have metadata as well. So a region container would have a region name and a sales manager associated with it. And they might say that the content of a region can only be a state container. In other words, it can only have a subfolder known as a state container. Now, then you can define a state container and say, okay, it has a sales rep and a state. And the only content that that state container can have is a customer contract. So in case somebody mistakenly tries to put some other kind of document in there, the system will stop them and say, no, we don't take any other kind of document here. Only customer contracts in this here. And it can also have a retention policy. So that container might say, only keep things for 3 years and then delete or move off to archive or something else. So I think this slide builds out a little bit. Our architecture looks reasonably simple on paper. We split the idea of the application server, which does, well, what do we have here? In this case, the application server is really where all the requests are served. So the end client makes a request for a document. The application server is going to use the retrieval server on the back end to figure out what it needs to get. And the reason we do it that way is that this allows a lot more scalability. The application servers can have a full index of all the documents that are available without actually carrying the load of the documents themselves, kind of like we separate call paths through media server and switching through the CIC server. It's a very similar architecture to that. One thing that I want to point out is that as far as storage, we've added adapters for different kinds of storage. We realize some of you want to keep all your data on your own disks, on your premises, and that will work. We've got an adapter for that. We also realize some people are moving more towards cloud storage. Amazon S3 is a good example of that. And so we're building adapters for that as well. We want you to be able to manage and put your data where you're comfortable, and that's what the retrieval server handles. So we got a pretty good list for content management functionality. I don't know if you know, a couple years ago we bought a small company called Acrosoft, and their specialty was content management for the insurance industry. And when we bought them, we got about 40 insurance customers who were already using Acrosoft, and B, most importantly to me on the development side, is we bought a whole lot of expertise. We got Chuck Wilson and a set of developers who were very familiar with content management, the ins and outs, performance issues, and things like that. And so we took their experience and used it to start building a more general content management solution. The one they had built was fairly specific to insurance, but they had a lot of ideas, and all they really needed was our resources to help build a much more general system. And that's what you are going to see in ICM. We can store any type of document or even streaming media in both their native or what we call unalterable formats. ICM allows annotation by multiple users, and this kind of dovetails well with IPA and workflow. The idea that along the way, people are adding information to the box, and sometimes that box is a document. Sometimes you're making annotations to the document. And back in the day, if it was just a Word document, it was hard to separate who said what over time. ICM has the idea of layers of annotation, so you can peel it back to the original document and then annotations added by each player along the way. Extensive search capabilities, that's something we've spent a lot of time on so that you can always find your documents by attributes, by particular search phrases, by customers, by people who handled it. That's one of the big things that we've been focusing on. And then we realize, of course, that we're not the first people to have ICM or some form of content management. So we have to integrate with a lot of third-party document management systems, and SharePoint is one that comes to mind readily. So we're building out interfaces to those third-party systems so that, again, you don't have to completely throw out your old system. We can interface to it and provide a lot of the capabilities we have on top of that system. I mentioned already Amazon S3, EMC Atmos is another one. I'm not sure of the complete list at this point, but we intend to build that out pretty extensively, probably based on customer demand. And of course, it ties into our CIC and IPA pieces extensively. That's one of the reasons we built it, is we see it as an important piece of the glue in the entire process automation picture. Okay, so where's this all going? There's a lot of pillars. Jack had a pillar slide. I got a pillar slide. When you take the people and the interactions with those people, and you tie them into the processes that are happening in your company, whether you've identified them or not, and the documents that are used to carry the data around for that, you're really looking at case management. You're managing a case one way or another. Something started, something has to be handled by your company, and that involves all these different elements. Interaction Center, it improves the ways that you can interact with your customers, so there's the people element. It also improves the way that your particular people can talk to each other, so more about the people. Of course, interactions are how those are tied together. And then the processes. Processes are key. Again, whether you've recognized them or not, processes are how you're getting your job done now, and they're how you're going to get your job done in the future. And then underlying it all is that data. The data is the important part, and that's in the documents. So long term, I don't know if you'll ever see something called interaction case management out of us, but we're certainly looking at ways to bind all that together and look at everything as a case. And we'll probably do it a lot like you see us doing with interaction content management, where we'll start with a very general layer and use object-oriented methodologies to say, okay, you can define a case with these particular attributes, and then one particular case might be a trouble case, for instance, and we'll add attributes to that and inherit from the base case. Okay, interaction mobilizer is another thing that I want to talk about. Jack touched on the fact that 2/3 of college kids would rather have a mobile device than a date. I question that. I want to see the data later on that. But it is very prevalent for not just college kids, but everyone to use their mobile device as much as possible. It's a major convenience for people. And so we've realized that a lot of contact centers, a lot of companies out there, they want a presence in the mobile space. And especially if they can use the mobile devices for call avoidance, then it's a big win for everyone. The customers are happier, and you don't have a huge call volume. Okay? This came out of an exercise that Don had a couple years ago. We were brainstorming about things that could hurt our business. And Don came up with the horrifying thought of, what if something happened in the industry that drained the call volume? People weren't calling call centers anymore. And, you know, I never see Don get scared, even when he's flying a plane. But he actually got pretty scared about when we talked about how fast it could happen. And then he slept on it. And the next day, he wasn't scared anymore. He was excited because he's like, I got an idea. Let's drain the call volume out of other people's call centers. And so that's how Mobilizer was born. The idea that there's a next generation customer service wave already starting, and it's almost a grassroots movement started by people with mobile devices, and we have to help our customers take advantage of that. And so we came up with the idea of Mobilizer as a way to allow you to rapidly deploy mobile applications out to your customers, and in the long run, get to a point where you're not getting as many calls because service is being done over the mobile device. And maybe it still requires an interaction, or maybe they're actually navigating IVR and handling everything over the mobile device. So let's talk about customer service today. Don likes to hype the frustration factor. It tends to be run for the convenience of the servicing organization, not always the customer. This is what we get from customers a lot. In fact, I, as a customer, having just moved my house, know that it's still very frustrating to deal with utilities and internet and everything like that. Not exactly where we want to be with customer service. Don's son had a similar experience, and his son is college age, and he does have a mobile device, and he doesn't have a date. So I guess he fits your data, Jack. But he was stunned when he moved his apartment to find out that he actually had to call the electric company to get service. He couldn't do it over the web. He couldn't do it over his phone. He was stunned and a little bit PO'd that he had to call them. Don said it was quite funny when he had to explain the process. You actually have to call someone to get this service moved. And David was like, why? Don said, that's a good question, but you do. So customers are frustrated with this. And since they have so much at their fingertips now on mobile devices, they're starting to ask, why do I have to call someone? Or why do I have to wait for certain business hours to take care of this? Their expectations are quite high because of technology, because of what the iPhone and Android have given them. So they're looking for different ways to conduct business. And they want to be able to choose how they conduct that business. So really we're looking at these devices and to a certain extent social media driving a whole new way that customers want to get social service or get service from their contact centers. It's like I said, it's a grassroots movement, and we're capitalizing on it with Mobilizer. The idea of Mobilizer is that you're facing a sea change out there, and it's going to happen quickly. More and more devices. These college kids are getting out of school. They expect the convenience they had at school with mobile devices to roll right out into the real world. And as Jack said, they've got money to spend. So the question is, how soon can you get a mobile app out there? Mobilizer is really what's going to make you able to move quickly. I don't know if you've priced out having mobile apps written custom. It's expensive. The developers are hard to find. You know, it's the old statistic. Any cutting-edge piece of technology, when you start a new project, faces a large chance of being canceled because the technology's new, the developers are still learning their tools, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Mobilizer is the idea that you can package your information. Mobilizer can do a lot of the automated wrapping to make this into an iPhone or Android deployable app and get it on the marketplace for you. This example we've got here, of course, shows interactive intelligence in the branding, but one important piece about Mobilizer is that you put your branding on it. So the name Interactive doesn't appear on the mobile device at all. It's your app. The customers see it as your front end. A lot of boxes to make it look confusing, but in general, what this is saying is, you know, you've got the ability to have customers connecting to you through this DMZ. All right, we have servers in the DMZ, and they're backed up on the other side of the firewall by the application servers. And the application servers can look directly into IVR so that you can help customers pre-navigate IVR. They can look at existing databases. They can call web services to build out the data that you need. And in the end, what you've got is a customer who has a smartphone or a tablet. They go out to your customer service app out on the marketplace. They're going to download your app, and connecting to one of your mobile service portals, they can then carry out various self-service things, whatever you made available. And it's very similar to calling into IVR, but customers don't see it that way at all. They see it as, wow, I've got this mobile app and it's very convenient. They might be doing very similar things that they would have done through IVR, but to them it's a different concept. Authentication is an important piece. In some cases, you want to know which customer you're talking to. It's not a generic navigate the IVR, but something about case management. We're putting in plugins for different kinds of authentication. A big one is the social media authentication. A lot of mobile users expect to use Facebook. It's called OAuth. It's a standard for authentication. They expect to use that. That's acceptable in a lot of cases if you just need to know identity. But in other cases, especially finance handling things, Facebook is a little too weak for those cases. And so we put in other plugins so that you can back end the authentication against servers that you know about. So your IS department can say, no, 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 if you've got customers accessing financial data, it can't be Facebook. We need a much more strict authentication scheme. And so we're building in adapters so that you can hook into your back end authentication. So what your customers are actually doing is, in some cases, using the app to request interaction with an agent. So that's more of a first step. I could see cases where they're saying, I want to get a call back, or I want to talk to an agent right now. So I think I dropped a slide here, but essentially, what your end users are going to be doing is, in the beginning, they're still going to access information with agents. They might ask for a callback. They might ask for some interaction, a chat, or something with them. Over time, I'm hoping we'll support video. We don't have that yet, but the idea of I want to do a video chat with someone on my iPhone. But the idea is that long term, when you can recognize through reporting what kind of services your mobile users are accessing, you can build out more and more capabilities so that they can get that data taken care of themselves. And in the long term, you're reducing your call load, but still keeping the service level high. So here's some examples of what we see based on interactions we've had with customers, what kind of things that they are going to do with their mobile customer service. Auto insurance is a big one. I think you've already seen ads from a couple different insurers about the being able to file claims or do things with your insurance. Another common one is opening trouble tickets, checking the status of existing trouble tickets. And in fact, we're writing a demo app for interactions using Mobilizer to show trouble tickets over our support system. Health insurance, membership info, product orders is another one, checking the status of a product order, things like that. I could see that being very popular with your end users on mobile devices. Okay, does anybody have questions about Mobilizer?
Jeff, one thing that we've seen a couple of instances with Mobilizer, the potential app, is just to be able to check the queue status.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the Mobilizer app has a couple different, I'll call them widgets. They're not really widgets in the documentation, but it's like a widget where you can say, all right, I want a very generic mobile app. All I want is people to check wait times on the queue. And we've built in a little hook. You drop in the wait time control, it's going to show them wait times on this particular queue. Or they can say, I want to request a callback. We have a callback widget. And they click that button, and it can either put them in the callback, immediate, or they can say, call me back in 10 minutes, so we schedule a callback, okay? But yeah, those are some generic things that we've put in that make it pretty easy to do a very simple mobile app right away. So you can quickly get a presence out there, and then over time, build up more functionality, and when you do send out the update, just like all the other mobile apps out there, when the people click update, they'll get the new services on their device.
Does Mobilizer allow you to build your own app store, or are you actually publishing out to the iOS and Android app stores?
We publish it out to the marketplaces. Do you have a need for your own app store? Or?
We have our own app store today, but it's within our dealer network itself.
Oh, interesting.
And
Okay.
Publishing to iOS, as you know, you got to go through Apple and get
Yeah.
all your certifications, all
Right.
that kind of stuff. So.
Oh, that's it. We should talk about that offline. There might be some options there. Any other questions?
I know you didn't touch on this, but something that a lot of customers are excited about is interaction web portal. I know there's not a couple of sources here.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't include slides on that. Yeah, Interaction Web Portal, we've realized that besides consumers that are your end users out there, some of you are outsourcers. And so your customers are other big corporations. And they want to know, they want a window into what you're doing. And Web Portal is designed for that. It gives them access to see what's happening with calls or interactions that are taken in the name of that particular outsourced customer. It allows you to listen in on calls. If you allow that, the end customers can listen in and see what's happening. You can also generate immediate reports to find out what kind of activity is happening in your name by the outsourcer. Is there more details that you wanted on? Yeah, and we released that a while ago, and it's been doing very well. We got a new round of updates, I think came out a couple months ago. So it should be fairly capable by now. Any other questions? Okay, do you have any? Oh yeah, go ahead, Jack.
Jeff, is it possible to quickly review the architecture, just because you covered some things that are new and how they all kind of fit into the all-in-one and where those new things kind of...
Yep. Okay. Well, let's see. I guess I might end up using this. Is that why you had it brought in? You knew you were going to ask this question. Deep down, the architecture is a real basic event-driven engine. Long ago, we built this thing called Interaction Processor. And it's, we might call it a dumb system. It's very event-driven. It understands certain events come in. It understands that it has code executed to carry out those actions based on configuration that came from a database. Okay? So we built this dumb system, and then we said, okay, we're going to make it smart by making plugins that know things about the outside world. So one big plugin was telephony. We said, okay, one kind of event is going to be an incoming call. So we built this telephony module, and it registers events with IP and says, okay, incoming call, transfer, disconnect, all these different events are going to happen to an object. And IP doesn't understand the specifics of a call. It just understands objects. Telephony adds the specialization that makes it handle calls. In a similar way, we built it out for chat. We built it out for all kinds of events. Okay? Now, that's a real simple system, and that was the picture of it, completed out like this. That was the picture of it 10, 12, 13 years ago. Okay? Well, that's at the core of every CIC server still today, this event-driven nature. What we also did was we said, okay, there are some subsystems that don't plug in like that, and they provide basic services. So, you know, if you think of IP sitting out there, I drew a picture of it earlier, with all of its plugins, thus making it specialized for, you know, interactions, chats, etc. IP needs to be able to communicate to these different things and send them out, and it does it through something called Notifier, right? So Notifier is the glue that hooks all these different subsystems together. So if we need database access, for instance, that's going to go through a database adapter out here, all right? All of these things sit inside the CIC box, okay? The CIC box is sitting there responding to events. A SIP notification comes in, for instance, and one of the things that the CIC box has to be able to do is talk out to separate boxes, media server, for instance. Okay, so in the case of a CIC box, is this kind of the idea of what you want to know? Am I on the right path? Okay, so now all those things are embedded in a CIC box, right? And we have work being farmed out to media servers. Now, media servers can process audio. They can do speech analysis. Anything that has to do with media is what they'll do. Eventually, they're going to handle media, video, things like that. And the way we built it was that CIC only understands there are a set of media servers handling the work for me. And the nice thing about having a set is now we can make it handle a lot of load. So if we size your system and say you need 3 media servers, and then later on you grow and say we need to resize, we can say, okay, it's time for another media server, right? So CIC understands the idea of farming the audio work out to another system. Similarly, CIC, since it's just a real basic event-driven system, can now say, okay, I've got a new event for this thing called an IPA process. I'll call the IPA subsystem and farm the work out to them. So in the end, at the core, we built a really generic event-driven engine and a system for farming work out to other boxes. And so we've laid on top of that the specialization for handling calls, handling chats, handling workflow, doing content management, and things like that. Does that make sense with what you're asking? Did I go into enough detail? Or Mike Beard, do you want to throw anything in there? All right. Did anybody have any questions? Okay.
For this next segment of the presentation, we're going to bring in someone remotely, Bob Chappelle, who's leading our technical sales at Interactive Intelligence, and Bob's going to demo the Analyzer product for us. Bob, I don't have as detailed of a bio on you and background, but if you wouldn't mind giving the 2,200 people here in this conference center a little introduction, that'd be terrific. Would you mind, Bob?
No, I don't mind at all. Good morning.
Morning.
Oh, there are a lot of people. Okay, good. I started with Interactive Intelligence almost 12 years ago. Started in the education department and worked there for about 5 or 6 years, and then transitioned into what we call technical sales. But really what we do is just demonstrate the product to support the efforts of our sales team and our partners. So if you guys have any questions, I should be able to answer most of them on functionality, what we can do, and hopefully I can show you guys some really cool, exciting stuff this morning.
Well, Bob, what we were hoping to do is we were going to walk them through Analyzer. Maybe you could demo a bit of the product.
Let me share my screen with you now that you know some personal stuff about me. What you're looking at is a live environment. This is my desktop inside of our domain, our production domain, and we're going to look at a few different applications. The first one that I think I want to bring up. Are you guys able to see those icons? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Good. First thing I'm going to bring up is a supervisory view. Now this is this view is simply a queue that we're looking at. The top half of the queue has a lot of statistics. It's all real time. These are real calls coming and going in our system. And I have certain alerts set for various thresholds in this application. So you'll see colors change, and you'll see some different things happen on the screen based on when those thresholds are reached. Below the statistical view is the actual queue itself. So these are the actual calls down here. And below the queue are my control buttons. So I have the ability to jump onto a call if I need to. For instance, I know Jason Lee is a fairly new agent of ours, and so if I highlight that call, I could click in and listen to his call. Maybe if I detect that he's needing some help, I can coach him and tell him what to say without the customer even knowing that I've joined. Or if the customer suddenly says, I really need to speak to a supervisor, I can just click join and basically scare the customer by saying, hi, this is Bob, how can I help you? But the key is that I'm able to see other pieces of information in this view. I can see the skills that were asked for when the call came into the queue. I can even see why, if the customer did have to wait when they came into the queue, what was the reason? Was it because we didn't have the right skills, or was it maybe because there were simply no agents available whatsoever? In this case, it looked like we just didn't have the right skilled agents in the right place at the right time. And there are a lot of other attributes that can travel with every single call. However, this still doesn't give me a lot of information as to who I should be listening to, other than the fact that I know which user is maybe my newer agents. So we've come up with a way of actually analyzing the conversations so that we can, in fact, see if there's an unhappy customer, or maybe there's an agent that may be saying things that we really would not like to have said to a customer. And what we can do is we can analyze both the agent side of the conversation and the customer side. And I'm going to go ahead and, this is the marketing queue here. There's currently no calls in here, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to place a call in here, and you can see that analysis taking place. Any questions so far?
Nope, we're good, Bob.
All right, so let's go ahead and do that.
Interactive intelligence. If you know your
Let me make my agent available.
anytime to dial my name, press 2.
And I'm going to press 3 to go in the marketing queue.
Welcome to the marketing queue.
And there's my call from Don Johnson, or Dave Johnson. So I'm going to go ahead and answer it like I'm supposed to be answering it. Thank you for calling Super Mobile Customer Service. My name is Bob. How can I help you? And let's go to the customer now. Hi, Bob. Hey, I'm calling again about a problem I've been having, and I've got to tell you I'm getting very frustrated with you people, and I'm ready to cancel my account. And then we'll go back to our agent who's going to grovel a little. I'm very sorry to hear that, and I completely understand your frustration. What seems to be the problem? Now, you can see right away that one of my alerts has just gone off saying that there's an unhappy customer in the marketing queue because we've reached a specific score in my alerts. Let's see if we can really make that agent squirm. Well, I keep calling back and trying to get this problem fixed, and I'm not having any luck. This phone just isn't working well, and you people don't seem to want to help me. And then the agent, just before he starts crying, can say something like, well, I'm sorry to hear that. We really do want to help you. Can I get your account number? And the final say by the customer, no, Bob, you don't understand. I don't want to give you my account number. I have called you people many times, and I'm frustrated with the way I have been treated. I simply want to cancel my service, and you people do not seem to understand that. And so we have just suddenly escalated to a very unhappy customer in the marketing queue. But as a supervisor, I can see two things right here in real time. First of all, and let me, because I'm going to, okay, I don't want it to pick up the words I'm saying while I'm talking to you guys, so I'm muting the phones. My agent is doing his best. He's really doing okay. My customer is the one that's unhappy. If I hover over the agent score, I can see some of the phrases that we picked up in the words. If I hover over the customer score, I can see the first 9 keywords that were spotted. And I can even right-click on this call and display both sides of the information in my view if I want to. Now, this gives me a couple of really important things. I'm going to go ahead and close this down because we'll be looking at this information later. But what this does, and let me disconnect the call and show you a queue that's actually being monitored. Let's go with, find customer satisfaction. This gives me the ability to literally sort by my most unhappy customer. So if I click customer score, I've got this guy right here, and I can literally go in and listen to my worst customer, if you will, or my most unhappy customer. Typically, that's not what you're going to be able to do in a call center. This gives the supervisor the ability to quickly assist customers before they disconnect. Now, 5 years ago, that wasn't a problem. We could analyze the recordings and we could find out, okay, this guy was pretty unhappy when he hung up. Let's go ahead and give him a call. He's probably cooled down enough. It's been a couple hours. Let's give him a call and apologize. Maybe send him a gift card or something like that. Today, that's not good. It's certainly not good enough, because what's the first thing a customer is going to do when they disconnect? They will turn to Facebook or Twitter and let as many followers as they have know what a difficult time they had dealing with your company. That basically is taking a small little brush fire that you could have put out if you'd have gotten on that call into this raging forest fire that you will never be able to control, because now there are, 30, 40, maybe even 100 people that just got notice that this guy, a friend of theirs, was really badly treated in your call center. So it's really important to get that customer while they're still on the phone. You don't want to let that go to even 5 minutes. Once that person tweets and hits enter, it's out there, and it's a lot of bad publicity for your call center. Now, we've got the ability for our customers to be able to manage and build their own call list sets. And that is in the administrative interface. The administrative interface is where we do all the administrative work, including adding the people, the work groups, and so forth. But we also have Interaction Analyzer keyword sets located in here as well. And you build your sets of keywords or phrases that you would like to detect. And they can be positive things that your customer is saying, positive things that your agents are uttering, and then negative things that can be on either side of that conversation as well. And you build them in sets because we're going to be able to look up based on the category tag here. These are just simply tags that allow us to be able to look up specific keywords that were uttered. So if I want an unhappy customer, I want to hear about all my unhappy customers, then below here are the actual keyword phrases that we've built in here to detect an unhappy customer. And you can see there's quite a few of them. You have the ability of detecting, is this word going to be, or phrase, going to be spotted easily? And we will automatically check that. We call it Spotability Index. And this is simply the way that we analyze the word that you type in. The way we detect these words is not with a dictionary with thousands and thousands of words in it. We do it with what are called phonemes. In other words, these are the sounds that make up every word that you may possibly hear. So with it are 2 syllables, with, so it's actually 3 sounds, w, f, and it. And that's what we would use for with it. Yes is a pretty simple word. So if I try to add the word yes, because I want to hear when my customer says yes, I go down here to where I added yes, and look at the Spotability Index. It's very low, 17%. You probably wouldn't detect that very easily. So we want to make sure that you are at least given an advance notice if you try putting in a phrase or something that won't be found easily by our system. However, I could go in and I could change it to yes, we can. And then what happens is your Spotability Index goes up quite a bit. I didn't really need to put capitals in there now, did we? There we go. Yes, we and can. So now, because I've added a few syllables to that one word yes, now yes we can is something that we will be able to detect very easily. Now notice to the right here, I also have a customer score and an agent score. If an agent says yes we can, that's something I'd like to hear, so I'll give him a positive 5. I could put a different score on a customer if they say that. So you've got the ability of putting individual scores in each keyword that you put in there. Now, I don't want to keep this in here because that certainly doesn't tell me about an unhappy customer. So let me go ahead and delete that one real quick. But the reason we have customer score and agent scores for every phrase is you may have a category called cursing, which we will not be displaying for you today. But you can fill it in with the phrases that you would like to use, and then if a customer utters it, yeah, that's a negative phrase for a customer, but if an agent hits it, then that's going to really be a low score. So you can have cursing being analyzed. Now, once you've built your keyword set lists, then what you do is you apply them to the workgroup queues that you want to have monitoring those keywords. And again, in the same application, Interaction Administrator, yes, please save my changes. And in the workgroup container, in this case, we'll look at marketing because that's where that call came in from, is marketing. You can see the Analyzer Keyword Sets tab. These are all the keyword sets that were in that list, and these are the ones that we're actually using. And notice the channels that we're actually sending them along. So you can have a keyword set be analyzed by the customer channel or just the agent channel or both channels. Cursing would be a good example of both channels. I'd like the agent and the customer side to be analyzed, and I would like to score it in this workgroup queue. Now here we've got customer churn, which is just simply saying cancel my service, that kind of thing. Now it says first call resolution customer. That's a little misleading because really it's not first call resolution. What we're doing here is we're saying, hey, if the customer says I've called back, I keep calling back, that kind of thing, then FCR, which is actually first call resolution, is the tag we will look for. Unhappy customer is another one. The tag, I believe, for unhappy customer was, in fact, unhappy. So you apply whichever keyword set you would like to have analyzed into the queue itself. And again, looking at the keyword sets, these category names or words here are actually what we're going to be looking for when we go to find the recordings later. So not only are we able to do real-time analysis, but we also have the ability of searching for, in this case, unhappy customers. So, going back into my supervisory view, I can go and I can look in my recorder tab and look for unhappy customers. Now, this is just simply a way to query for recordings. These are my private searches. I call it unhappy because I know exactly what it is I'm looking for. The recording tag is equal to unhappy. So those tags are actually made up, and if you look here, you can see the tags that we saw in the Interaction Analyzer container. These are the different tags that we had, and I'm going to simply look for any of the words in the unhappy caller list. I also want the work group to be marketing because that's where the calls come in, and I'm going to add one more attribute just to show you how quick we can do this, and it's going to be, let's go date and time. Let's just say I want it to be today. So I'll specify a specific date period of today, and I'll go ahead and run the search. Now, I've already put at least 2 calls in there. There should be a third with the one that, yeah, there's 3 right there. I thought there was a third. I did one this morning. We did some maintenance this morning, and I had to do some testing on it. I did another one just before we reached out in the meeting today, and then this is the one that we did just a couple of minutes ago. So if I go and bring that up,
Thank you for calling Supermobile Customer Service. My name is Bob. How can I help you?
and so now you're able to see the words as they're being uttered, and they actually are marked on the actual WAV file or the sign files.
Hey, I'm calling you just
So you can see how the different words are being picked up. And this is why you receive the various tags on the actual recording itself. And the agent's really getting groveling quite a bit there. And also, as you're going through, you can put your own tag in wherever you want. Like right here, if I detect that that agent's really getting, or the customer's really getting upset, customer's really losing it here. And so I can put my own tags in as I'm listening to it as well. But this just gives you an idea of, first of all, how you can find those recordings, where the specific words are that were uttered, and these are the tags that we actually picked up from the words that were detected. Unhappy, first call resolution, agent was doing his best, customer wanted to cancel their service, which is customer churn. Any questions?
Does it do any scoring based upon tone?
Bob, the question is, does it do any scoring based on tone?
Not yet. That's our next phase, is emotion detection.
What type of language, what other languages are supported? Different questions.
Bob, what other languages are supported?
It was released with North American Spanish and Canadian French, and English, of course.
And we continue to release new language packs for it over the course of several SUs.
Can it score and detect based on silence?
Bob, can it score and detect based on silence?
Based on silence?
Yes.
No. The silence can actually be seen in the recording itself, but to actually score based on silence, it's actually scoring based on what it hears, not what it doesn't hear.
Do all the keyword sets have to be built, or does it come with some frequently used things like the customers, or does every company have to build their
You don't want to touch the customers?
Bob, the question is, does it come prepackaged with some frequently used words across all industries, or does it have to be built every single time?
Well, we could prepackage it. It's just that there's so many different industries out there, and the simplicity of actually putting in the words yourself is so easy that you'll end up building it, or at least modifying anything that we can get sent to you. But it could have prepackaged words in it if the customer wants that.
Any others?
Yes, can you retag after the fact, or can you only do it real time? So if you wanted to go back and search a subset of calls for another tag, you can do that.
That might be a good inlet. Bob, the question is, can you go back and actually re-look at or look at a previous recording?
Not yet.
No, we don't. Unless it was analyzed by Analyzer, we don't go back and re-look at the recordings. There's a lot of third-party applications that do that already. I think our real interest here is to really do this in real time, and then offer that capability. If you do want to look at the recordings that have been analyzed, then we can do that. Now, another feature that's coming, and it's available today with customization, but we're going to try to get it out of the box as soon as we can and make it easy for the end user to use it, is to detect when a specific word is detected, not so much a set, but if a certain word is detected at the agent's desktop, we would like to launch some kind of a prompt. Now, this can be maybe if the customer, let's say it's an insurance company, like a health insurance company, or no, let's go financial, a financial company, and the assistant is talking to an investor, and the investor says something about, well, I'm getting ready to retire soon. You know, it just kind of comes up in conversation. Well, retire soon may be something that a more advanced assistant could say, oh, well, you know, we've got a retirement package that is just excellent for what you would want. But this guy may not have heard him say retire soon, and he may go on with, well, yeah, you know, we can make sure your investments are where they need to be, and we'll make sure they're healthy. And, well, wait a minute, you said retire soon. You know, that could pop a screen on the agent's desktop to let them know, hey, wait, you might want to start talking about our new retirement, you know, plan for this gentleman. So we could, by analyzing the specific words that are uttered, be able to pop specific screens to the agent's desktop to help guide them through the process of working with that customer. And that's possible today with customization, but what we're trying to do is build it into the easy part of the product so that it would be very simple for an end customer to go ahead and make those customizations themselves.
I've got a question. Because this runs in real time, how much data is stored and for how long? Or isn't it?
Bob, did you hear that one?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Since this runs in real time, how much data is stored and for how long?
Well, the data that's stored are the keywords that were uttered, the keyword sets that they came from, and the recording itself. If you have to have the recording running as well. It's up to you as to how long you'd like to keep that. It goes to a SQL server. The data itself will go to a SQL server or some sort of a database that you're using. The recordings will go to a different storage server so that you can keep them off of your main server. But it's really up to you as to how long you want to hold on to that data. We don't purge it automatically at any specific time. You can determine that yourself.
So Bob, as long as you have, if you have a 2-year retention for recordings and the data's there for 2 years.
Correct. As long as your SQL database has that same kind of retention, which it should have. They should have the same. They should match up.
So Mike, does it integrate with a reporting engine then that you can go back and look at agent performance over time and tell how the agent's doing, how the customer's doing?
So Bob, the question is, does it integrate with the reporting package so that you can report on like the agent performance?
Yeah, that's a great question. When we release this, we're kind of hoping for a focus group to come out and tell us exactly how you would like to use this data in reports. We haven't got any specific reports built today. They have templates built, but we're kind of hoping that when we release the reports that it will be exactly what customers would like to see. How would you like to see these reports? Do you want to see the words that were used? Would you rather have just scores? They're all available in the database right now. We just haven't released any templates for them yet. And again, we're kind of doing surveys with customers that are using this to see just exactly what they would like to see in a report.
Bob, the question is, can you only use Analyzer and ICBM or Supervisor?
Well, in 4.0, ICBM is the wrapper for Supervisor. So this is, in fact, the supervisory view that you get with 4.0. There's many views I can add to it. Right now I'm looking at a workgroup detail view, but this is where you access Supervisor in 4.0, is inside of the ICBM application.
Any others?
One more question. Sure. We have multiple locations, call centers with multiple agents, and that one call center, they have multiple agents that are remotely located or located in certain facilities. How would that be handled from an analysis?
Would those agents be, in this example, would they be in this queue?
Sure.
Doesn't matter. Any others? No other questions, Bob?
All right. Anything else that you guys would have questions on other than Analyzer?
No, I think that'll do it.
One more. Can the agent see this? So the agent can evaluate how the call's going also, or is it only the supervisor?
Bob, sorry, one more question. Can the agent see this or only the supervisor?
Well, today that's the supervisory view right here. We could customize it to where the statistics could be viewed on a wallboard or possibly at an agent level if you would like to do that. But out-of-the-box functionality today is inside of Supervisor. I'm not sure how uncomfortable that would make agents seeing their conversations being scored, though. That might be kind of tough.
Any last questions? Bob, okay, Bob, great. As usual, thanks so much for taking the time and sharing with us.
My pleasure. You guys have a great day.
All right, take care. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
We're going to ask Jeff to come back up for a couple more Q&A type of things. I know that some of the folks from the Miles table had a few questions. Some folks from Generac as well. So go ahead, feel free to shoot.
Let's start back here.
Yeah, I just asked the question if you're applying the same technology to social media listening.
You mean in Analyzer, are we? Or?
Yeah, well, not in Analyzer, but using that. It's not spoken as much as written.
Right, right. Right now we've integrated with a company called Radian6. Yes, we have. And before that we were working with a company called Buzzient. And right now that's our solution. We've been talking about how to integrate the concept of the Analyzer with text analysis. And so that's really our long-term direction, is that Analyzer will analyze all forms of media. But for now, we're integrated with Radian6 as a way to hook in with social media and monitor. Any more questions from that table? Okay, let's go over here.
Actually, my questions were answered about Analyzer.
Oh, excellent.
I had two of them. One of them is what's your anticipated delivery of that text recognition?
As part of Analyzer?
Yes.
I don't have a time frame for you. Which means it's not this year. But yeah, that's why we're relying on the Radian6 for now.
And then also on your publishing of your web apps, do you know if they're going to enable SQL authentication today?
On our web apps, you mean the...
Web apps as far as authentication through the SQL authentication? In other words, you put an app out there for a dealer, but our dealer's profile to manage for login authentication of SQL. Can I go in SQL?
I guess, which web apps? Are you talking about Mobilizer? Or?
Yes.
Yeah, we can do that. We have different adapters that can plug in for authentication.
So you got one
So,
for SQL.
yeah, so we'll have one for SQL.
Jeff, will Analyzer be also ported to email, fax, text, chat, or is it just focused on voice?
In the beginning, we focused on voice, and what I was trying to answer for them is our direction is to be able to analyze all the different types of interaction. So text-based, which would be chat, email, etc. The goal is to use the same spotting words and phrases for all the different media types. We haven't gotten there yet. We've been focused on, in particular, the speech pieces. We considered that the more difficult piece, and so we attacked that first.
One quick note, I don't know if you want to talk about SMS and what we're seeing in the market there and how we're building out for that. That might be something of interest to the crowd.
Sure, okay. Yeah, SMS is an interesting one. It's definitely another kind of media from our perspective. And we've had what I'll call a first iteration of implementation for SMS for quite a while. And we've had quite a few customers using it in a beta form for a while. And one of the things we put it out there for was to find out, how are people using this? One of the big questions that comes up a lot, and we're still wondering what users expect too, is it seems like the initial round of users really expected one-hit SMS. In other words, something they send in to the contact center and they get a one-hit response. Okay? And that was for a lot of what I would call IVR-driven answers. These are almost fully automated. The agent barely has to do anything. Sometimes the agent has to just look at the response and make sure it's right. Okay? But what we're realizing is that some people, especially with the way the iPhone's kind of brought in a new way of displaying text messages as a threaded conversation, that now customers are starting to see that SMS is actually a threaded conversation with the contact center, which is more like a chat. And so where we're going is the ability for contact centers to make that SMS, even though they're coming in as independent messages, make it look like a threaded chat so they always get to the same agent. Okay? And there's kind of a fine line there, because if I text something to a contact center and then, I don't know, 2 weeks later text something else, that's probably not the same conversation anymore, right? And so there's a little bit of configuration that we'll put in front of you to make decisions about how long in a gap of conversation should be considered a new conversation that could go to another agent. And that's something that we're building out in our next round of SMS.
Jeff, thank you again.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you all. I appreciate it.